ornithopters with missiles were a big problem.
Okay.
Basically, all people would do, get a missile ornithopter, fly over to a location, find someone, and just unload the missiles on them.
Okay.
Well, there's a very easy way to kill someone. It's just 2-3 missiles, and it's enough to kill someone.
Oh, like another helicopter?
And then they yeah.
No, Scott, that happened to you. That hasn't happened to me.
I'm talking about player, not...
Oh, player. Oh. Yeah.
And by the way, what happened to me also happened to other people, but yeah.
But it takes 2 to 3 missiles to kill a other player, or a...
Yes, a player on the floor. Easily.
That sounds much, to be honest. 3 missiles. Or maybe a shield
you gotta hit them. Like,
even hitting next to them is enough to deal quite a significant amount of damage.
Yeah, because it's an explosive or something.
So the German Nazis set up here now. I just flew over their outside base. It's a copy of last time. They're in E6.
Tore skrev ja og sendte en smilende emoji. Vil du svare?
Nei.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything half price.
I have a helicopter in my... I'll be back.
I'll be back.
Why the fuck do I have a helicopter in my thing already?
Maybe you should just have multiple of those guns on you.
Does it work that way?
Yeah.
What does it take to craft one?
Just make a vehicle backup tool.
Yes, what does it take to craft one?
Nothing. It's ancient tech.
Where is it even at?
Oh, here's another ornithopter that was blown up. A Harkonnen ornithopter.
Well, I can't craft it on myself, so that doesn't help right now.
There, vehicle backup tool. 6 copper ingots, 2 particle capacitors. That's it.
Okay, that's nice. Doesn't help me now.
Okay. Jeez, Dennis.
Does it help me now, Scott?
The knowledge helps you all the time.
With knowledge comes power.
Wow, it's already 11 to 2. Whew.
Oh, yeah.
So we're still fighting over Argasats? That I did not expect.
Hallo?
Hei, Rick.
Nei, ja, jeg bare lurte på om du visste når de skulle begynne å grave hos dere på den der... til den ene bomben? Eller skal jeg bare dra innom der på vei hjem fra jobb for å sjekke?
Nei, kanskje i dag, men jeg er ikke sikker.
Ok.
Vi snakket om at du skulle få trekt til kameraet i løpet av uka. Nei, forrige dagen.
Ja, for da kan jeg jo eventuelt vente til mandag eventuelt, da, se om de har begynt da.
Så du kan bare trekke den selv om de ikke er ferdige. Det var det de skal bare gjøre. De kan bare ligge løst, og så ordner vi resten.
Ja, ok. Ja, men da kan jeg gjøre det da. Kan bare stikke inn.
Kan du høre? Den er noe sånn...
Skal jeg la det være noen ekstra meter da, fra Fra der det røret stikker opp på bakken, så kan vi tre på nytt rør hvis det trengs forlengelse.
Ja.
Ja.
Så vi kan få den, for den må vi kanskje sette lenger inn eller lenger ut, eller et eller annet, da, eller litt lenger opp eller litt lenger ned.
Ja.
Spørs hvor vi ser kabelen nå.
Ja.
Men er det noe sånn, vi kan ringe og sjekke og høre om hvis vi ikke skal begynne å grave det i dag, så er det ikke noe stress.
Nei.
Hvis vi vil ha andre oppgaver.
Ja, fordi jeg har noe jeg skulle fått ferdig på hva heter det, en Valder på ved Asker eller Sandvika der.
Ja. Jeg kan sjekke og så ringer jeg deg opp igjen, så ikke du som stresser innom oss for ikke noe.
Ja, men det er supert. Du kan eventuelt ta det til mandag eller tirsdag.
Ja, så jeg bare sjekker når den skal begynne å grave, for da må jo den være utført når du skal begynne å grave der.
Ja. Men
Yes.
supert.
Yes. Og vi ringer opp igjen.
Ja, tusen takk.
Hei da.
Ha det.
Heading back.
Discord on the mobile has started muting automatically. What the hell?
That's weird.
Oh, maybe it was because I got a phone call and it did, I guess. I'll see you guys later. I'm gonna listen to some music in the car. So, now driving to Valder videregående school I'm working at the moment.
Fair-sized jaws at hand in a nasty mood, quite likely to try toast a dwarf, or even pony, for a change. Or else he should have done a bit of good, quick burgling. A really first class and legendary burglar would at this point have picked the troll's pockets. It is nearly always worthwhile, if you can manage it. Pinched the very mutton off the spits, purloined the bear, and walked off without their noticing him. Others, more practical, but with less professional pride, would perhaps have stuck a dagger into each of them before they observed it. Then the night could have been spent cheerily. Bilbo knew it. He had read a good many things he had never seen or done. He was very much alarmed as well as disgusted. He wished himself 100 miles away, and yet somehow he could not go straight back to Thorin and company empty-handed. So he stood and hesitated in the shadows. Of the various burglarious proceedings things he had heard of, picking the troll's pockets seemed the least difficult. So at last he crept behind a tree just behind William. Bert and Tom went off to the barrow. William was having another drink. Then Bilbo plucked up courage and put his little hand in William's enormous pocket. There was a purse in it, as big as a bag to Bilbo. Thought he, warming to his new work as he lifted it carefully out. This is a beginning. It was. Trolls' purses are the mischief, and this was no exception. Here, who are you? It squeaked as it left the pocket, and William turned round at once and grabbed Bilbo by the neck before he could duck behind the tree. Blimey, Bert, look what I've copped, said William. What is it? Said the others coming up. Lummy, if I knows. What are you? Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit, said poor Bilbo, shaking all over and wondering how to make owl noises before they throttled him. A hobbit, said they, a bit startled. Trolls are slow in the uptake and mighty suspicious about anything new to them. What's a hobbit got to do with my pocket anyways? Said William. And can you cook 'em? Said Tom. You can try, said Bert, picking up a skewer. He wouldn't make a mother mouthful, said William, who had already had a fine supper. Not when he was skinned and boned. Perhaps there are more like him round about, and we might make a pie, said Bert. You? Are there any more of your sort of sneaking in these here woods, you nasty little rabbit? Said he, looking at the hobbit's furry feet. And he picked him up by the toes and shook him. Yes, lots, said Bilbo, before he remembered not to give his friends away. No, none at all, not one, he said immediately afterwards. What do you mean? Said Bert, holding him right way up, by the hair this time. What I say, said Bilbo, gasping, and please don't cook me, kind sirs. I'm a good cook myself, and cook better than I cook, if you see what I mean. I'll cook beautifully for you, a perfectly beautiful breakfast for you, if only you won't have me for supper. Poor little blighter, said William. He had already had as much supper as he could hold. Also, he had had lots of beer. Poor little blighter, let him go. Not till he says what he means by lots and none at all, said Bert. I don't want to have my throat cut in my sleep. Hold his toes in the fire till he talks. I won't have it, said William. I caught him anyway. You're a fat fool, William, said Bert, as I've said afore this evening. And you're a lout. And I won't take that from you, Bill Huggins, said Bert, and put his fist in William's eye. Then there was a gorgeous row. Bilbo had just enough wits left, when Bert dropped him on the ground, to scramble out of the way of their feet before they were fighting like dogs and calling one another all sorts of perfectly true and applicable names in very loud voices. Soon they were locked in one another's arms and rolling nearly into the fire, kicking and thumping, while Tom whacked at them both with a branch to bring them to their senses, and that, of course, only made them madder than ever. That would have been the time for Bilbo to have left, but his poor little feet had been very squashed in Bert's big paw, and he had no breath in his body, and his head was going round, so there he lay for a while, panting, just outside the circle of firelight. Right in the middle of the fight, up came Balin. The dwarves had heard noises from a distance, and after waiting for some time for Bilbo to come back, or to hoot like an owl, they started off one by one to creep towards the light as quietly as they could. No sooner did Tom see Balin come into the light and he gave an awful howl. Trolls simply detest the very sight of dwarves uncooked. Bert and Bill stopped fighting immediately, and "A sack, Tom, quick!" they said, before Balin, who was wondering where in all this commotion Bilbo was, knew what was happening. A sack was over his head, and he was down. "There's more to come yet," said Tom, "or I'm mighty mistook. Lots and none at all it is," said he. "No para hobbits, but lots of these here dwarves. That's about the shape of it." "I reckon you're right," said Bert, "and we'd best get out of the light." And so they did. With sacks in their hands that they used for carrying off mutton and other plunder, they waited in the shadows. As each dwarf came up and looked at the fire and the spilled jugs and the gnawed mutton in surprise, pop went a nasty, smelly sack over his head, and he was down. Soon Dwalin lay by Balin, and Fili and Kili together, and Dori and Nori and Ori all in a heap, and Oin and Gloin and Bifur and Bofer and Bomber piled uncomfortably near the fire. "That'll teach 'em," said Tom, for Bifur and Bomber had given a lot of trouble and fought like mad, as dwarves will when cornered. Thorin came last, and he was not caught unawares. He came expecting mischief, and didn't need to see his friend's legs sticking out of sacks to tell him that things were not all well. He stood outside in the shadows some way off and said, "What's all this trouble? Who's been knocking my people about?" "It's trolls," said Bilbo from behind a tree. They'd forgotten all about him. "They're hiding in the bushes with sacks," said he. "Oh, are they?" said Thorin, and he jumped forward to the fire before they could leap on him. He caught up a big branch all on fire at one end, and Bert got that end in his eye before he could step aside. That put him out of the battle for a bit. Bilbo did his best. He caught hold of Tom's leg, as well as he could. It was thick as a young tree trunk, but he was sent spinning up into the top of some bushes when Tom kicked the sparks up in Thorin's face. Tom got the branch in his teeth for that, and lost one of the front ones. It made him howl, I can tell you. But just at that moment, William came up behind and popped a sack right over Thorin's head and down to his toes. And so the fight ended. A nice pickle they were all in now, all neatly tied up in sacks, with 3 angry trolls, and 2 with burns and bashes to remember, sitting by them, arguing whether they should roast them slowly, or mince them fine and boil them, or just sit on them one by one and squash them into jelly. And Bilbo up in a bush with his clothes and his skin torn, not daring to move for fear they should hear him. It was just then that Gandalf came back, but no one saw him. The trolls had just decided to roast the dwarves now and eat them later. That was Bert's idea, and after a lot of argument, they'd all agreed to it. "No good roasting 'em now, it'd take all night," said a voice. Bert thought it was William's. "Don't start the argument all over again, Bill," he said, "or it'll take all night." "Who's arguing?" said William, who thought it was Bert that had spoken. "You are," said Bert. "You're a liar," said William, and so the argument began all over again. In the end, they decided to mince them fine and boil them. So they got a black pot, and they took out their knives. "No good boiling 'em. We ain't got no water, and it's a long way to the well and all," said a voice. Bert and William thought it was Tom's. "Shut up," said they, "or we'll never have done. And you can fetch the water yourself if you say any more." "Shut up yourself," said Tom, who had thought it was William's voice. "Who's arguing with you, I'd like to know." "You're a booby," said William. "Booby yourself," said Tom. And so the argument began all over again and went on hotter than ever, until at last they decided to sit on the sacks one by one and squash them and boil them next time.
Who shall we sit on first?
Said the voice.
Better sit on the last fella first,
said Bert, whose eye had been damaged by Thorin. He thought Tom was talking.
Don't talk to yourself,
said Tom.
But if you wants to sit on the last one, sit on him. Which is he? The one with the yellow stockings,
said Bert. Nonsense. The one with the grey stockings, said a voice like William's.
I made sure it was yellow,
said Bert.
Yellow it was,
said William.
Then what did you say it was grey for?
said Bert.
I never did. Tom said it was. That I never did, said Tom. It was you. 2 to 1, so shut your mouth, said Bert. Who are you talking to?
said William.
Now stop it,
said Tom and Bert together.
The night's getting on, and dawn comes early. Let's get on with it.
Dawn take you all and be stoned to you, said a voice that sounded like William's, but it wasn't. For just at that moment the light came over the hill, and there was a mighty twitter in the branches. William never spoke, for he stood turned to stone as he stooped, and Bert and Tom were stuck like rocks as they looked at him. And there they stand to this day, all alone, unless the birds perch on them. The trolls, as you probably know, must be underground before dawn, or they go back to the stuff of the mountains they are made of, and never move again. That is what had happened to Bert and Tom and William. "Excellent," said Gandalf as he stepped from behind a tree and helped Bilbo to climb down out of the thorn bush. Then Bilbo understood. It was the wizard's voice that had kept the trolls bickering and quarrelling until the light came and made an end of them. The next thing was to untie the sacks and let out the dwarves. They were nearly suffocated and very annoyed. They had not at all enjoyed lying there listening to the trolls making plans for roasting them and squashing them and mincing them. They had to hear Bilbo's account of what had happened to him twice over before they were satisfied.
"Silly time to go practicing pinching and pocket-picking," said Bomber, "when what we wanted was fire and food." "And that's just what you wouldn't have got of those fellows without a struggle in any case," said Gandalf. "Anyhow, you're wasting time now. Don't you realize that the trolls must have a cave or a hole dug somewhere near to hide from the sun in? We must look into it." They searched about and soon found the marks of trolls' stony boots going away through the trees. They followed the tracks up the hill until, hidden by bushes, they came on a big door of stone leading to a cave. But they couldn't open it, not though they all pushed while Gandalf tried various incantations. "Would this be any good?" asked Bilbo, when they were getting tired and angry. "I found it on the ground where the trolls had their fight." He held out a largish key, though no doubt William had thought it very small and secret. It must have fallen out of his pocket, very luckily, before he was turned to stone. "Why on earth didn't you mention it before?" they cried. Gandalf grabbed it and fitted it into the keyhole. Then the stone door swung back with one big push, and they all went inside. There were bones on the floor, and a nasty smell was in the air. But there was a good deal of food jumbled carelessly on shelves and on the ground, among an untidy litter of plunder, of all sorts from brass buttons to pots full of gold coins standing in a corner. There were lots of clothes, too, hanging on the walls. Too small for trolls, I am afraid they belonged to victims, and among them were several swords of various makes, shapes, and sizes. Two caught their eyes particularly, because of their beautiful scabbards and jeweled hilts. Gandalf and Thorin each took one of these, and Bilbo took a knife in a leather sheath.
It would have made only a tiny pocket knife for a troll, but it was as good as a short sword for the hobbit.
These look like good blades, said the wizard, half drawing them and looking at them curiously. They were not made by any troll, nor by any smith among men in these parts and days. But when we can read the runes on them, we shall know more about them.
Let's get out of this horrible smell, said Feely. So they carried out the pots of coins, and such food as was untouched and
Hei, Siri. Kjør til Valder videregående skole.
Henter veibeskrivelser til Valler videregående skole.
food as was untouched.
Lenger framme.
And such food as was untouched and looked fit to eat. Also 1 barrel of ale, which was still full. By that time they felt like breakfast, and being very hungry, they didn't turn their noses up at what they had got from the troll's larder. Their own provisions were very scanty. Now they had bread and cheese and plenty of ale, and bacon to toast in the embers on the fire. After that they slept, for their night had been disturbed, and they did nothing more till the afternoon. Then they brought up their ponies, and carried away the pots of gold, and buried them very secretly, not far from the track. Very secretly, not far from the track by the river, putting a great many spells over them, just in case they ever had the chance to come back and recover them. When that was done, they all mounted once more, and jogged along again on the path towards the east.
Where did you go to, if I may ask?
Said Thorin to Gandalf as they rode along.
To look ahead,
said he.
And what brought you back in the nick of time? Looking behind,
said he.
Exactly, said Thorin. But could you be more play? I went on to spy out our road. It will soon become dangerous and difficult.
Also, I was anxious about replenishing our small stock of provisions.
I had not gone very far, however, when I met a couple of friends of mine from Rivendell.
Where's that? Asked Bilbo.
Don't interrupt,
said Gandalf.
You will get there in a few days now, if we're lucky, and find out all about it. As I was saying, I met 2 of Elrond's people. They were hurrying along for fear of the trolls. It was they who told me that 3 of them had come down from the mountains and settled in the woods, not far from the road. They had frightened everyone away from the district, and they waylaid strangers. I immediately had a feeling that I was wanted back. Looking behind, I saw a fire in the distance and made for it. So now you know. Please be more careful next time, or we shall never get anywhere.
Thank you, said Thorin. Chapter 3. A short rest. They didn't sing or tell stories that day, even though the weather improved, nor the next day, nor the day after. They'd begun to feel that danger was not far away on either side. They camped under the stars, and their horses had more to eat than they had, for there was plenty of grass, but there was not much in their bags, even with what they had got from the trolls. One morning they forded a river at a wide, shallow place full of the noise of stones and foam. The far bank was steep and slippery. When they got to the top of it, leading their ponies, they saw that the great mountains had marched down very near to them. Already they seemed only a day's easy journey from the feet of the nearest. Dark and drear it looked, though there were patches of sunlight on its brown sides, and behind its shoulders the tips of snow peaks gleamed. "Is that the mountain?" asked Bilbo in a solemn voice, looking at it with round eyes. He'd never seen a thing that looked so big before. "Of course not," said Balin. "That's only the beginning of the Misty Mountains, and we've We've got to get through or over or under them somehow before we can come into Wilden and beyond. And it's a deal of a way even from the other side of them to the lonely mountain in the east where smoke lies on our treasures. Oh, said Bilbo, and just at that moment he felt more tired than he ever remembered feeling before. He was thinking once again of his comfortable chair before the fire in his favourite sitting room in his hobbit home, and of the kettle singing. Not for the last time. Now Gandalf led the way. We must not miss the road, or we shall be done for, he said. We need food, for one thing, and rest in reasonable safety. Also, it's very necessary to tackle the Misty Mountains by the proper path, or else you'll get lost in them, and have to come back and start at the beginning again, if you ever get back at all. They asked him where he was making for, and he answered, You are come to the very edge of the wild, as some of you may know. Hidden somewhere ahead of us is the fair valley of Rivendell, where Elrond lives in the last homely house. I sent a message by my friends, and we're expected. That sounded nice and comforting. But they had not got there yet, and it was not so easy as it sounds to find the last homely house west of them.
Hei, jeg skal bare si at jeg er på vei nå. Jeg er snart ved avkjøringen til der du kan ta til Bergen. Jeg kjører kanskje litt. Det er Sandvika. Ja, Sandvika, ja. Ja, det må da ses snart. Den er god. Yes, ha det.
There seemed to be no trees and no valleys and no hills to break the ground in front of them. Only one vast slope going slowly up and up to meet the feet of the nearest mountain. A wide land the colour of heather and crumbling rock, with patches and slashes of grass. horse nearly slipped down the slope. "Here it is at last," he called, and the others gathered round him and looked over the edge. They saw a valley far below. They could hear the voice of hurrying water in a rocky bed at the stream. The scent of trees was in the air, and there was a light on the valley side across the water. Bilbo never forgot the way they slithered and slipped in the dusk down the steep zigzag path into the secret valley of Rivendell. The air grew warmer as they got lower, and the smell of the pine trees made them drowsy, so that every now and again he nodded and nearly fell off, or bumped his nose on the pony's neck. Their spirits rose as they went down and down. The trees changed to beech and oak, and there was a comfortable feeling in the twilight. The last green had almost faded out of the grass when they came at length to
try something, see if the microphone actually works or not. No, it doesn't seem to work.
To an open glade not far above the banks of the stream.
Yeah,